You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. I got Brad Hunt beside me. Today's podcast is with Ryan Michler. He is the owner and founder of the Order of Man podcast. I've been friends with Ryan for quite a few years now. He has a great podcast. It's called Order of Man. I've got the Order of Man t-shirt on right now. I love Ryan's work. He's an awesome guy. We get into some deep conversations. It's extremely motivational, in my opinion. Michler is really trying to bring forth a podcast that inspires men to be men. To be masculine, to be prepared, to be providers, to preside over their family or their work or whatever it is that they're involved in. And he not only tries to do a podcast with great people like Jocko and others that can sort of bring their insight to the discussion, but he also does a great job of just being a real human being. He's not afraid to talk about the things that have held him back in life and how he's fighting those demons to get ahead of them. That to me is putting himself in a pretty vulnerable place. And it's also inspiring in the sense that, we often look at people online and we look at them and we go, oh, they got it all figured out. We need their life. Yeah. Right. We look at that, look what they accomplished. And inside though, we're all human beings and we all have our flaws and we all have our faults. And it's really easy to look at someone else's life and say, oh, they got it all figured out. My life sucks. But in reality, we all have our issues. We all have our problems and we all battle, some better than others. But the fact is, it's inspiring to know that someone's human, but still fights to overcome it because deep down we all are. So I like it that Ryan doesn't have a curated public image and then a private image over here. Right. It's all out there in the open. And this podcast with him is no different. He shares some personal experiences, some demons he fights with, but also inspires me to be a better man through it all. So I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. If you don't follow the Order of Man, if you don't follow Ryan Michler, check that out. It's great stuff. He has some phenomenal guests, great discussions. You can find his Order of Man podcast. Start there. Listen to that. Find some guests that really intrigue you. You're gonna be glad you did. Hope you enjoy today's discussion. If you like the podcast, if you like the work that we are putting out, you can support us by subscribing to the channel, liking the videos, leaving comments. We appreciate that. Look for films. We're going to drop films on February 26th. Yep. And then we're going to continue to drop films every Sunday through
it's like April
10th or 15th or something.
Like that, yeah.
So 7 or 8 weeks is our goal. And they're going to be great. I'm excited. Some of them are bear. Some of them are deer. But all in all, it's going to be a highly entertaining, I think, informational set of films. You're going to like them. Check them out. Join us starting February 26th each Sunday. We'll do giveaways and such to go along with that and try to get some real community engagement and have some fun with you guys. So look forward to that. If you want to support us, you can also support us by shopping over at Mountain Ops. Use the code GRITTY over there. You're going to save. They have some great new Ignite flavors, some Yeti mode. 300 grams of caffeine or something. That's a little intense.
Not for me, folks.
If you really want some beast mode stuff, check that out. And also, you can support us by shopping over at Peaks Equipment. Peaks has some great teepees, gaiters, trekking poles, headlamps, all in the product line right now. They're making some great stuff. They're making waves. The new teepee, I can't recommend it enough. Solid product, great design. We beat the hell out of it. Yes, we know what it can do, what it can't do. It's a monster. It's a great product, and some of the features that it has just unique to it. The cross member support system, with the trekkers in the canopy is just a game changer
in so many ways.
And so check that out. Use the code GRITTY over there every time you shop at Peaks, and use the code GRITTY. It helps us continue to do what we do. So thank you. We appreciate you. Hope you enjoy this show. And as always, stay gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and today I'm joined by Ryan Michler.
What's up, man?
I'm good.
It's been a while. I think the last time we talked is when I dogged out on a bear hunt with you.
That was a while ago, huh?
My son had, if I remember right, my son had a powerlifting meet, and I've really tried to make that a priority above all else because I can go bear hunting later, but I can't always see his first power lift.
They're going to grow up. But, dude, you have been getting after it, though.
Trying to.
I've seen you slay some nice deer. And
I've shot some good deer. Speaking of my son, I drew out for a moose tag in Maine this year.
Nice.
Last year, I guess.
Yeah.
So we've been putting in for 3 years, and I'm thinking we'll just get the points. No big deal. And my buddy calls me up. He's like, "Hey, man, you drew out." I'm like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, you drew out." And I looked, and sure enough, we had drawn out. And, so we went a couple hours north. We were on the Maine-Canada border, and it was awesome. I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. I'm not a big rifle hunter.
Yeah.
So I called the guy up that I was going to our guide, and I'm like, "Hey, man, is a 308 big enough?" He's like, "Yeah." "Is that what you have?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I have." He's like, "Yeah, okay, just make a good shot." And I'm like, "Oh, all right, I'll do what I can." And in Maine, what's cool is you can have you have your permittee, which was me. I was the lead, the tag holder.
Yep.
And then you have a sub permittee, so that can be whoever you want. They want the ability for 2 guns. So my son, my 14-year-old, was my sub permittee. And I went up there. Cool. I went up there one day before he did because he had a football game, and I saw a shooter, but he said, "Dad, don't shoot it unless it's like a Maine state record, and then you can." I'm like, "All right." So I had to pass on this on the first day.
Yeah, the son's got gold.
Oh, he knows. He's a bigger hunter than I am. So
I love it.
So we did that, and then the second day we passed. We passed on a couple that were kind of smaller, and then we didn't see anything for 3 days. It just got hot, and we didn't see a dang thing.
That's hunting, man.
Oh.
Sometimes it's magical. And sometimes it's a grind.
It was so hard to sleep, though. That was the hardest part because we were like, "Oh, should we have shot that?" We couldn't sleep. And then Saturday, so it was the last day. There's a 6-day hunt. Saturday, we stumbled into one and shot him. Dropped one shot, just dropped him on that shot. So the 308 was plenty. And it was fun, man.
Well, I'm glad you're pursuing that. I love watching you from afar. I love the fact that with your podcast, and for those who don't know, Ryan Michler is the genius, the founder, the go-getter behind the Order of Man podcast and that whole brand. And not only do you do that great show, but you also embody the principles that you're promoting. You're out there trying your best to improve yourself in areas of fitness, your combat skills, jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
You're out there trying to hunt as well. You're living a life. You're focused on your family, your kids, your wife, the whole kit and caboodle. You're like trying to me, model what it means to be a man in today's world.
I'm trying to figure it out. You say
nobody's perfect.
That's right, and I'm less than even that. It's so strange, when I mess up. I'm obviously intimately familiar with my own inadequacies and my own shortcomings, and so I feel like I'm in a strange position. I've never positioned myself as the epitome of masculinity.
Yeah.
I grew up. My mom raised me primarily on her own. Really wasn't introduced to outdoors and shooting and martial arts, like the things you would generally consider manly.
Yeah.
I really wasn't introduced to that until high school, and I started getting into sports. But I stumble and I mess up and I fall, and so I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I feel like I'm on the path as well.
Yeah.
And I've noticed with Order of Man, it's kind of like those old hair club commercials where they're like, "I'm not just the president, I'm a client," or whatever.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm not just the founder of it. Like, I'm actually inspired and motivated and uplifted by guys like yourself, incredible men that I get to talk to on the podcast, the guys that are part of our programs and go to our events. And I'm like, oh, man, I need this just as much, if not more, than any other man that might be listening to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think there's like a balance, right, between you wanting to be the best version of you that you can have, and benchmarking benchmarking yourself against these other men and other standards that you value. But then at the same time, comparison is the enemy of happiness.
It can't. It can be.
There's that saying, right? And
I take issue with that a little bit, though.
I am with you
because people do in modern don't compare yourself. Feel good about where you are. Self-love, positive body movement. Although you may not. That may not be healthy. It's like I don't subscribe to that. I actually look at guys like you, and I'm not comparing in an unhealthy way. Like, oh, he's better than me. No, I look at it and think, all right, well, here's what Brian's producing, here's what Joe's producing, here's what Steve's producing. I don't get trapped into letting it bring me down. It actually shows me what's possible.
Yeah, I'm the same way. There's things I say in my circles, guys I hang out with. I push people kind of hard.
Yeah,
and I have people who get hurt or offended by my blunt approach. But I'm like, look. I'm here to challenge you. I want you to be better. I want me to be better. I hold myself to this standard as well.
Yeah.
You can hate on me. You can knock on me too. I think shame is really important. I love shame. If we're on a hunt together and you underperform, I'm here to shame you for it. Like right. you should have done better.
It's a healthy thing in the right perspective.
I absolutely. How many times, some of my best growth as a man came when I felt shamed by my wife.
Totally.
It's
totally.
Right there, I'm like, no, I want to be her. I want her to just admire everything about me.
Yeah.
Be proud of me, love me. So when she's disappointed and when she's like, I expected more from you. Dude, I'll change overnight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll be working so hard to be better the next time than I was before. And if she just said, no, you're good the way you are. I get it. You're not perfect. I would not. I need that shame, and I think we all need it.
We do, and think about that in the context of marriage. What would be the point of being married if you weren't there to challenge each other?
Yeah,
I think that is the ultimate job or the ultimate role of marriage is that you find somebody that compliments you, find somebody that pushes you in the right place, but ultimately somebody who challenges you in a way that's healthy, that drives you to be a better person.
Yeah. A few years ago, one of my first hunts I did with Ryan Lampers, Stealthy Hunter, we went to New Zealand. Mm-hmm. We hit the southern Alps of New Zealand, and it was nasty. I mean, it was dangerous. We should have had crampons and ropes and stuff. And we're hunting tar up in snow on 1,000-foot drops and cliffs. The fall line is 300 yards away on a steep, and we have no arresting device, no pickaxes. We were just stupid. It was a dumb thing to do. But mostly we stayed pretty safe. Just a couple of times where we're like, we didn't have the right gear and we pushed it. We shouldn't have. And I can remember being up there on this hill, and we brought, it was Ryan and I, and we brought with us Luke Duesenberry. Luke was a cameraman at Mountain Ops at the time, and he came and he was filming and helping me film because I filmed most of my own stuff, but he came along. And he was young, and this was kind of a new experience for him. Maybe 22 or something, and it was really daunting. It was really intimidating for him. And I don't blame him. It was intimidating for us. And we've had lots of years of experience.
Right.
And but he was holding his own pretty good. We spot this tar, and it's way up there. A couple 1,000 feet vertical straight up. And it looks pretty doable to me. I mean, it's going to be rough. It's going to be hard, but it's fine. And Ryan and I are loading up the packs, and we're going after this tar. We've been hunting 4 days and haven't found one. We found one. We're going to go kill it. We're loading up the packs, and we're getting ready to go. And Luke turns to me, and he's like, Brian, I don't think I can do that. I can't do that. And I turned and looked at him, and I said, well, Luke, some men can, and some men can't. And I turned, and I walked off. And Brian and I just started climbing and just left him standing there.
Make a decision.
And I was like, yeah, there's some men are strong and some are weak. If you don't do it, he got the message.
Yeah.
We climbed up there, and about when I was to the peak, I was like, I confessed to Ryan, this is a lot worse than I thought. And I was like, I feel kind of bad.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually glad Luke didn't
It would have been
climb this. I don't know if he could do it. This is pretty dangerous, and he doesn't have the experience level that we have, nor the fitness. I'm like, man, I've kind of felt a little bad, right? Because I pushed a little hard. And sometimes you can do that if you really want to push someone.
Sure, yeah.
And you want to challenge people, you know. Ryan gets on this deer and on this thing, and just when we're about to kill this tar, Luke, I hear somebody behind me. And I turn around, and the dude did the climb.
Really?
He did the climb.
That's
and he's
rad.
like, my respect for him went from like
of course.
here to like just through the roof. Through the roof. I was like, I wouldn't have believed he could do it, and yet he did it. And he got there, and he's like, I just kept sitting there thinking, some men can, some men can't.
Just
and I was like, I had to do it. I had to do it. Whether I got hurt or whatever, I'm going to do it. And not only did he do it, he did it without knowing where to go exactly. We left him in the dust.
Right. He didn't even know. Yeah.
He's like, I'm like,
that's amazing. I might want to steal that. Some men can and some men can't. That is powerful.
So we brought that up the other day, and I was talking to some buddies, and they're like, we need that T-shirt.
So I was already thinking of a T-shirt.
Some men can.
I'm like, dang it. I should have thought of that.
But I look at that, and I'm like, that changed Luke. That day changed Luke forever.
Yeah.
He's a new level of a man. And if I had just said, don't worry, Luke.
It's okay.
Some people, it's not a big deal. We'll do it without you. I understand. He wouldn't have had that growth as a man that day.
Yeah. I think that's the softness of society. You know, people hear that story, and I know a lot of people, maybe not that listen to our podcast, but I know there's a lot of people who would hear that and be like, "Oh, I can't believe, you put him in risk, and what a dangerous thing, and now you made him feel bad about himself, and now he's going to be horrible, and he's going to have all this trauma." And I think that's that's modern culture, the softness of modern culture.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's a big push for everybody to feel good about themselves at all times. I mean, I know I don't, and I think that's the right attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine feeling good about underperformance. I just don't, and I underperform.
Right.
But when I do, I'm not happy about it. I'm like, okay, I could have done better. I went to the gym this morning, and I couldn't get my entire workout because I had commitments to be here, and I didn't go as hard as I could have, and I got done, and I was sitting in the Uber on the way back to the hotel, and I'm like, man, I could have went harder today. Like, I should have went harder. And that's the right attitude.
Yeah.
Shame. Yeah. I was ashamed. Not so much that it causes me to stop, but causes me to think about how I'm going to perform next time.
I think it's okay to feel shame.
Yes.
I think it's important. I think we've gotten away from it in society, like fat shaming.
Right.
We should fat shame.
I
100%
agree.
Fat shame.
I agree.
Like, this isn't good.
And it's good for people to hear that, hey, you're not, like, it's not beautiful.
No.
It's unhealthy and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm not going to go walk around calling people who are obese like, hey, you're fat, you need to work on it. There's a time and a place.
And it's not that I don't have sympathy either. Like,
of course.
I have a different cross to bear.
Yeah.
Being overweight or having an eating issue or any of that kind of stuff, that's not mine.
Isn't for you.
And I feel passion for people that do. At the same time, the solution I don't think is to acceptance.
Yeah.
The solution isn't just to say like, well, I give you a pass.
Yeah.
That's not helping either. Somebody said this the other day. I think it was Peterson who was talking to somebody, and they said, well, if you love somebody, you accept them and you take care. And he's like, what's love? Define that for me.
Yeah.
Define love. Before we can move on, we need to know what that means.
Right.
And they're like, they start describing it, it's accepting and caring. And he's like, you love your kid for who they are now, but also for who they could be.
Sure. That's why you work to serve them.
That's why you do that.
Yeah.
Like they will only become something better. Like you love them for, like when a woman marries a man, you're fresh out of college, you're both like 24, whatever. You don't have a dime to your name.
No.
You haven't built a future. She doesn't even know if you'll be able to fully provide, right? She marries you for who you
could be. Yes.
Yes, she loves you now for what there is, but that's not the whole package. There's a package of she has expectations, hopes, dreams, wishes for you, and faith that you'll become that man that she's thinking you can become. She's investing in a future, right?
Yeah.
With you. And it wouldn't be love if she didn't demand or push for you to become that thing that she hopes you'll become.
Right.
And so love includes, like with your own kid, yeah, you're a good kid now, but I expect you to grow up. I expect you to be more responsible. I expect you to work harder as you get older.
Right.
I expect you to grow into the man or the woman that I know you can be. And that means I don't just accept you the way you are.
Right.
That means I don't just say you're good the way you are.
Well, there's discipline that comes in line with that. I get after my kids. In fact, I just saw them I saw them. I don't know what they're doing. They're doing races. I don't know if you saw them, but they've got another kid on their back, and they're running around. I saw them run that way, and I just saw them run this way. But yeah, there's discipline. There's hard conversations that need to take place. But I really do appreciate you talking about all of us having our own cross to bear, because a lot of the times, when we're pointing at an issue like obesity, for example, people might think that we're saying we have it all figured out. And I don't know if you know this, but over the past couple of months now, I've actually talked a lot about my own personal struggles with alcohol addiction. I don't know if you knew that or not. So I've, over the past couple of years, have really struggled. When I was in high school and right out of high school, it was bad, really bad. I mean, I was drinking and getting drunk every night and passed out. It was bad. And then I was able to put that down, and I had stopped for about 20 years. And over the past couple of years, it gradually crept into my life, and it became worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's been rough. But over the last couple of months, actually 6 months of sobriety now, and I've been to some meetings, and it's interesting how people will introduce themselves as alcoholics, for example. Like, I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. And I was really struck by this one woman. She stood up and she said, I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic, but I've been sober for 30 years. And I'm like, first of all, congrats. That's amazing. The fact that you've been able to stay sober in the wake of this addiction and this struggle that you have, that's amazing. So that's the first thing. The second thing I got to ask is, like, are you really an alcoholic? Like, is that the label that you want to slap on yourself?
Right.
And I think that's what people do. Like, I'm not going to say that. Am I susceptible to alcoholism? Mm-hmm. Does it affect me and impact me in ways that it doesn't maybe other people? Yeah, I would say yes. I'm not going to slap that label on myself.
Yeah.
But we do that. It's like, I'm fat, I'm a loser, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a this, I'm a that. And then it just becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. What if you're not that?
Right.
And you're actually something else, but you're so wrapped up in this identity that you get to play victim to that you aren't willing to see who you could potentially become if you took that label off and put it down and started doing work that made you something better.
That's like that label is, I think sometimes it's the fear of going back. If I deny that I'm an alcoholic, then I'll just start thinking I can just go to town again.
Yeah, and like with me, I don't deny it.
Yeah.
Like I realize that that is something that I am susceptible to. I've been sober for 6 months. I was walking in the grocery store the other day, and I had to get something, and I walked by the aisle with all the wine and everything, and I'm like, man, having a drink right now would be really nice. I'm like, what? What are you thinking? It's so crazy.
And it'll always be there.
Always.
It'll always be there. I find it, like I said, that's why, everybody has their own cross to bear.
Yes.
You look at someone else's life and you can go, oh, man, they got it all figured out, and I wish my life was figured out. And it's like, no, everybody's a human, and everybody has their issues, their weaknesses, their problems, their faults, some more than others. But that's why I think it's important to push people and even use a little shame and mockery here and there, especially among men. I think it's important among men. Women are different. Like, how they handle it can be different. But men, let's be honest, like, we respond to being mocked.
Yes. And if it's done in the right way, like if I came up to you, and we're buddies, we know each other, and obviously, we have a care for one another, and I said, hey, Brian, you're looking a little soft in the midsection. That's done. Completely acceptable.
Yes.
You know, I should be able to say that.
In fact, I was listening to Modern Wisdom.
Oh, yeah, with Chris. Yeah.
I was listening to him talk, and he had a woman on there who was talking about communication among women and female companions and historical behaviors and how manipulative women are with their language and how good they are at manipulating. Like, they'll do character assassination on other girls.
Oh, yeah.
But then they also don't want to say Karen's a bitch. What they're going to say is, I'm just super worried about Karen.
It's all passive aggressive.
She sleeps around a lot. She's been, she's just had a lot of sexual relationships, and I'm just worried that she's going to get sick or get a disease. her heart broken, you know? And so I just really worry about Karen. What she just said was Karen's a slut.
Yeah, right.
But she said
passing around her diseases and everything.
Yeah, but she said it as if I really am worried about her.
Yeah.
And, that's the sort of thing that manipulative people engage in, since they can't just come out and say it, or otherwise they're like, man,
oh yeah,
she just threw her friend under the bus like that. But this way it's couched in I care.
But you know what? Men do it too, though. I've noticed, because we have a lot of programs for men that we run, and I know a lot of
men do it, but not nearly to the level as women. But there are those men that have exceptional verbal skills.
Well, I'll say I think the reason they do that is because of the feminized soft culture that we live in. And so if I said, man, you're looking a little soft in the midsection, gasp.
Yeah.
I can't believe Ryan's such an asshole. It's like, no, it's true. Like, okay, so that might be true, and he got the message, and I was the one to give it to him. And so, but too many people getting offended over every little nonsensical thing that they shouldn't be offended about.
Well, she was talking about this with women and men, and she's like, she's like, men, the way they treat each other, like on a team or in the military, she's like, they're like, hey, fatty, hey, dumb, idiot, hey, moron, or they nickname each other. She's like, the meanest names.
Yes.
And they like go by those names by that day.
Forever.
And she's like, it's just an endless hate, rip, tear, and she's like, and all it does is make them all bond and get closer.
Right.
They don't get all offended, or she's like, if women did that to each other, it'd be over.
Yeah.
Like over. Women do not respond the same like that. But men, they absolutely, like, just walk into some kind of military or team football. You know, it's just brutal. It's just constant mockery.
Well, I see it. So I've got 3 boys and a girl, and I see it, especially with my youngest. He's just fiery, and he's just a little terror. And, his older brother will say something. He's like, you dummy. And he'll, like, come up and punch him, and then the older one will punch him back, and then they'll work it out. They get the pecking order, Yeah. But if he said that to my daughter would be like, oh, he called me a dummy, and the world is over. And it's just hilarious.
Yeah, she talks about how women bond, and it's just very different than men.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that's ironic, and I'm sure you deal with it with the Order of Man podcast. It's like, why are we trying to say women are men and men are women?
Yeah,
they're not.
That's a shame.
They're not.
Right.
Women, just like we just described, men are hard. They go into that place and they rip each other down.
Yeah.
To be closer.
Well, even with my boys running, you don't see girls doing that, but they're running around doing piggyback ride races, clearly.
Yeah.
And we should encourage it. We should foster it. We should celebrate it.
Well, on Chris's podcast, he was talking about they were trying to get men. There's a crisis of friendship among men.
Yes,
in
agreed.
the modern world, right?
Agreed.
And he's like, we're trying to get men to be more engaged with each other. Mm-hmm. They used to have the Rotary Club and bowling and archery clubs and these places where men got together and had camaraderie.
Right.
But now it's kind of siloed. It's internet, and we don't have those common meeting places as much, and there's not as much time for men to interact, and there's a crisis of friendship among men. They just don't have brotherhoods anymore.
Well, I think that's where hunting comes in. Yes. I started hunting. A friend of mine, he wasn't a friend at the time, but he had followed what we were doing, and he liked what we're doing, and he called me up, and he said, hey, man, like, I'd like to take you on a hunt.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't hunt. He's like, I know. That's why I want to take you. And he said it's an archery and a rifle hunt. We're going to shoot one deer with a bow, one deer with a rifle. I'm like, well, I don't have either. He's like, well, get it. Yeah. I'm like, all right, I'm interested enough. Yeah. And we went to Texas, and I was able to shoot 2 deer, and one with a rifle, one with my bow, and it was amazing. And then I've got a crew of guys. There's about 6 of us, and we go to Minnesota every year. And I met one of the guys through some events that we were running, and he introduced me to somebody else. Man, these guys, over the 6 years of hunting together, and we've probably spent, I would say, maybe 50 days over 6 years, 50 days, 60 days together over that span of 6 years.
Yeah.
And yet, I could call on any of those guys in any moment, and all of them would put down whatever they were doing and do whatever they needed to do to help me because of the bonds that we've built over the shared experience of hunting.
Very excellent point. In that same discussion, they were saying they had these female get-togethers, and they had done this work to sort of build female friendship circles, and they do this thing where they all get together and they pick a topic and they all sit down and they just kind of discuss this topic, and they all bond, and they have treats and stuff, and they hang out, and they're like, they try to do the same thing.
Treats, though. Can men do treats still?
We could do that, okay. but they did it with men, and nobody showed up.
Of course.
This was in England,
of course,
in Britain. And they keep doing this thing where no dude showed up.
Of course.
And they're like, how do we get the guys? And they keep trying. Finally, they realize, hey, we're going to build a barn.
Yeah.
Just show up and help build the barn.
All the men show up.
20 dudes, 30 dudes, and they're just building. They don't talk to each other. Hand me that nail.
Right.
I got a hammer? If you cut this just like this can really make this barn go together faster. If we build this wall, and it's all about the project.
Yep.
Nobody's feelings are being discussed.
But what's interesting about that is in that project, you find out pretty quickly, like you might see one guy and everybody knows who he is. That's the lazy guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that guy in my circle because that guy shirks responsibility and work. That guy is the one who knows what he's doing. I want that guy. That guy doesn't know what he's doing, but he's the hard worker. He's in my circle.
And what they found was men bond by doing things together.
Yes.
Not by talking about things.
Right.
And I look at my friendship with Ryan Lampers, who doesn't talk. He's a very introverted person. He doesn't say much. And when we're hunting, we're together 14 days in a row, just the two of us, isolated in the middle of nowhere. And eating freeze-dried food and just kind of glassing all day and hunting and stalking game. We have a job to do.
Right.
We're covering 12 miles today.
Yeah.
We're climbing this peak. We're going to summit. We're going to spend the week here. We're going to find that. We're going to do the things. And while we're super engaged in that, we're focused on a task. His daughter will come up a little bit. My wife will talk about some things. But that's not what we do.
Right.
We talk about the job.
Right.
We talk about, the plan, execution, getting it done. And most of the time, we don't talk at all. We just are executing.
The way that I heard it explained, it just surmises this perfectly, is that women build relationships knee to knee. So it's face to face, right? Like, we're looking at each other. Where men are shoulder to shoulder. So we're looking out and we're looking at a common objective, building a barn, or a common adversary, war, battle, right? Or football, or
Black
sports.
Bear, grizzly.
Right. Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Big bull
so
elk.
Shoulder to shoulder. And, if you look at, for example, church attendance rates, plummeting for men. Why? Because we don't want to sit in the pews and talk about this stuff. But you know what? If a pastor smartened up a little bit and said, hey, you know what, guys? We're still going to do church, but every Wednesday, we're going to go to the shooting range.
Yeah.
And then on this Wednesday, we're going to go build the barn. And on this Wednesday, we're going to whatever. You would see church attendance start to skyrocket with men because now it's not just about our feelings. It's about how do we put this into practice and serve other people.
Yeah, when I go back to and I reflect on my friendship with Ryan, and we've been friends since 2015, really close friends for the last 3 years. And I look at it and I'm like, who do I feel like would be there if I needed them? Who is utterly reliable? Who's trustworthy? Would never lie to me? Who is a badass?
Yes.
Like, it's like click, 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 and then I go and I just have those. That's the category where he's at in my brain, and then it's like, how many siblings does Ryan have? I don't really know. What's
Doesn't
his
even matter.
mom and dad? Like, I don't really know. And what does he think about God and stuff? I don't know. Like, it's just
doesn't matter.
Those things aren't we have common objectives to go on, and without that common place to go and mutual goal, I don't know that Ryan and I would just hang out and be friends.
What would be the purpose of that?
We were different. But yet
irrelevant.
He's because of that task and our mutual goals, he's one of the most important people in my life.
Right. This is why I think it's so important that, men hear this and I think they inherently know it. There's the whole concept of the lone wolf, and guys think, well, I don't need anybody. Okay, that works until it doesn't. And it's an arrogant thing. But this is why I tell guys, you need to go around other men, and you need to go where the good men are. Where are they? Well, they're hunting. They're at the gym. They're at jiu-jitsu. They're at business luncheons. Like, go insert yourself into that environment. If you don't have any friends, you're a man, you don't have any brothers, let's say, go to jiu-jitsu. And you're going to learn in a matter of several weeks the guys that you like, the guys you resonate with, the guys that you want in your corner, the guys that shirk responsibility, the guys who are weak, the guys who are losers, the guys who aren't disciplined, the guys who are.
Wow.
And you're going to figure all of that out, instantaneously. And then you begin to develop and build those relationships out with more intentionality about, hey, I like that guy because he's a hard worker, or I like that guy because the way that he trains with me is he goes hard. And I like that. He's not afraid to go hard. So I like that. That's a characteristic that I value in other men.
Yeah, I've found over the last couple of years that my circle of friends have shrunk, but the ones that are there are the ones that push me to be a better man.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely.
And we bring people along that I feel like have a long way to go. They're where I was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
As a man. And I think it's important to mentor those folks along, invite them along. It's also a balance because I need to see improvement or you get cut from the team.
Well, so I think men need 3 types of other men in their corner. They need peers. So those would be guys at the same level. So I would consider, like, for example, you and Ryan, peers, right? You're at the same level. There needs to be somebody out ahead that is blazing new trails that you're inspired and motivated by, and there needs to be somebody behind you, like your cameraman that you told
Brad, yeah.
In the story.
About
Luke. Somebody behind you that you can motivate and inspire and lead, but Luke has to show potential. You can only do that for so long before you're like, bro, you're cut off. But if you show development and growth, but you have to have those 3 types of people: peers, mentors, and people that are interested in being mentored by you.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That causes me to reflect a little bit on that. I could use a few more ahead of me.
Yeah, I
spend so much time in the mountains and kind of in my zone and stuff, but there are people I admire and look up to that I haven't that I would very much like to incorporate into that place. But I'd be that person for them that's, behind them a bit.
I think I run into the same thing, and I think at least I know what it is for me, and I think I know what it is for a lot of guys. A lot of the times we look at people we aspire to be like, and we think to ourselves, I don't have anything to add to that guy's life. Yeah. Like, what value can I provide him? And I'll tell you the value that you provide. You give that person an opportunity to serve. And we, as men, love to serve. We love to be important. We love to add value. And if you can be the guy who is inspired by somebody else and give that person an opportunity to provide value to you. Yeah. But here's the rub. Here's the trick. When they share things with you that you've said that you want to learn, you have to do 2 things. You have to apply it, and you have to report on it. So, for example, if you as a podcaster, and I'm inspired by you, want to learn from you, and you give me some advice, if you're my mentor, I'm now obligated to implement what you've taught me, and then come back and say, hey, man, you told me about this camera or this microphone or this setup or this style, and I did it, and it was phenomenal, man. I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's how you add value to a mentor's life where you think you don't have any other value to add.
Interesting. I'll tell you, what do you think about this? Like, as I've grown and I do what I do, there are a few people I want to engage with. But I also, in some ways, I'm like, and I've been like this since I ever started from the very beginning and throughout my whole life, where I'm like, well, if I want a seat at that table, I need to earn that seat. I need to be there.
Yeah.
So there's certain levels of achievement I feel like I want to meet, to build that seat at the table.
Yeah.
And so that is a driver for me. And when I probably wait too long before I feel like I belong at the table, before I try to open a door to go there. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of the times we do that because we go into it thinking, what can I get from the relationship? So, hey, this guy knows more than me, and I'd like to learn that, so what can I get from the relationship? when instead, what can I do to serve? How can I add value? So Todd, who's filming this, is a great example. He reached out to me years and years ago, and I really wasn't in the need of his services at the time. And then 2 or so years later, I had made a post in our Facebook group and said I need some video work done.
Yeah.
Bing, he reached out. He's like, hey, I can do that for you.
Yeah.
And then I needed some logo and design work. He's like, hey, I can do that for you. And then I said, I'm having problems with my merchandise. He's like, hey, I can do that for you.
That is absolutely how I sort of built this thing. It was always more about, okay, how can I help you, serve you.
Yes.
But I feel like sometimes I feel like I don't have the ability to serve someone at that level. They don't need a guy like me. They already have way more. Like, I'm not quite there for that level.
But you don't know that.
True.
You really don't. Like, those are assumptions. And that causes us not to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I actually think I could serve you in some way. And it's my job. The responsibility is on my shoulders if I want to be connected to you, to really explore what that might look like. And I might need to be creative. Here's another great way to do this is sometimes I come across somebody I want to be connected to, and I don't feel like I have exactly what they might need.
Yeah.
But I know somebody who does. And so a really easy way to serve both parties.
Put two people in contact.
That's it. So if you're like, hey, Ryan, I really need a good video guy. That's not me. Yeah. I'm not the video guy. But I know Todd.
Yeah.
And if I can make a connection, now Todd appreciates me because I got him some business. You appreciate me because I got you connected with Todd. And that's a great way to add value to people's lives in the absence of your own value that you can provide.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. Talk a little bit about Order of Man podcast. Okay?
Yeah.
I remember when we first met doing the podcast, you had a vision, you had a goal, you had an idea that you were working on. The podcast was slowly growing.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, it's a premier podcast.
It's crazy.
You've blown its thing up.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's wild.
You've had some incredible guests. Favorite podcast you've done? I know that's hard.
It's so hard.
Just maybe throw out a couple.
Yeah, I've got this question asked the last couple of days a few times, and
not what the audience liked. Not necessarily that. Like for Ryan Michler,
Gritty that came on. That was my favorite. Who really stood out to me is Tim Tebow.
Really?
Yeah, so he came out with his book a couple of years ago or so, and I had a woman working with me, and she was phenomenal, and she was doing a lot of podcast setup for me, and she's amazing, and she was able to lock down an interview with Tim Tebow.
Okay.
And she said that, hey, we want to do it in person, and got in touch with his scheduler. And found out they were going to be in New York, which is just a quick flight for me from Maine. And so, I was able to sit down with him, and I set up this podcast studio in my hotel room, and him and his team came up. And I'm telling you what, the minute that guy walked in, it was palpable. Like, you could feel it. You're like, oh, there's something different about this guy. I've talked with David Goggins, and I felt that with Goggins too, by the way.
Yeah.
And I've talked with, like you said, some phenomenal people that are very, very successful, very well known. But there was something that I felt about Tim Tebow, and I could tell that he had the heart of service.
Yeah.
Like, he really just wants to serve. And that was special to me.
That's confidence.
It was amazing. He was he knew exactly what his mission was.
Yeah.
And he was doing everything in his power to fulfill that mission. Agreed. He was good. Matthew McConaughey was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Terry Crews was a lot of fun.
Those. Yep.
Terry Crews is hilarious. He was kind enough. My mom is a big Terry Crews fan. And I told Terry, I was like, hey, my mom's a big fan. Like, I hate to ask, but do you think you could do a shout out? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, hey, Joan, I'm talking with your son, and I enjoyed this conversation. You raised a good young man. And I just want to let you know that I hope you're having a great day. And just like that kind of stuff means a lot to me because he doesn't need to do that.
What's the biggest, if you feel comfortable sharing, like the biggest, like that mistake you made where you're like, dang, man, but you learned so much from it?
So I remember Jocko has become a friend of mine over the past several years, and I interviewed him. He was my first real big interview.
Yeah.
And I was so scared. Like legit, not nervous, like scared.
Yeah.
And I get on the thing with him, the podcast with him, and we did it remotely. And he was just getting started, so he was pretty rough around the edges too.
Yeah.
Where he didn't really expand on things. And so I'd ask him, I say...
He still doesn't expand on things.
No, but he's better.
Yeah.
He's better. He's built.
I watched him on Modern Wisdom too.
Yeah,
it was like Chris had his work cut out for him.
Bro,
man.
He's a hard person to have a conversation with at times. But I asked him. I said, "So like, how do you do X, Y, and Z?" He's like, "You just do it."
Right.
And I'm like, "Do you care to elaborate?" He's like, "What's there to elaborate on? You just do it." I'm like, "Okay, this is gonna be rough." Yeah. And it was hard. It was the one that I remember being the hardest conversation I ever had. But I'll tell you how I solved that problem.
Yeah.
And how I feel like I'm becoming a better, I don't even say podcaster anymore, just a conversationalist.
Yeah.
Is curiosity.
Yes.
Curiosity. I used to go to podcasts with like 10 or 15 questions I wanted to have answered, and then they'd give me an answer, and I'd go, check. Point number 2.
Yep.
And it was horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And I wish I would have realized sooner, like, just go and be genuinely curious about the person you're having a conversation with, what makes them tick, where they failed, where they succeeded, why they win, why they don't. And the more you're just curious about people, it lets out all the weight of, like, how am I going to make this a good conversation?
Absolutely.
And it just flows.
Yeah, I've heard a few people talk about this, where being self-conscious makes you really nervous.
Oh, absolutely.
Being self-conscious, like, you sit there and you're like, if you're sitting there thinking about when you're public speaking, Jordan Peterson, I heard him say this, you're in front of thousands of people, and you're like, do I look stupid?
Yes.
Did I say the wrong thing?
Right.
How do I look right now? Am I making sense? And when you focus on yourself, it makes you focus on yourself more.
Yes.
And it makes you self-conscious, which is the worst thing you want to be when you're trying to speak in front of people.
Yeah.
You want to be so outwardly focused. Like I focus on really, really trying to communicate the idea.
Yes.
Make sure that, like, be service oriented toward the individuals.
What do they need from me?
What do they need from me? Are they getting it? Like, okay, listening to them and really focused on trying to deliver the best I can of the message. And I don't even think about myself and how I'm coming off and whether they like me or don't like me or any of that kind of stuff. Doesn't cross my mind.
Ironically enough, that's what makes people like you.
And that's the curious thing, too.
Yes.
I learned that early on when I was doing a podcast. People were like, well, you just sat down with Joe Rogan and did a show and da-da-da. And I was like, oh, I was nervous. But I've always been able to push that away because I'm more curious than I am nervous.
Right.
I'm like, dude, I have Joe Rogan here. Yeah, I have so many questions.
I know.
Like, that's a natural inclination for me. So I just start asking questions, and I'm not even thinking about how I look.
Right.
It doesn't cross my mind because
I'm
so freaking curious. And so I've thought that same way for years.
One thing that I've started to do, and I don't want to say I'm like a spiritual person. I mean, I am. I believe in God, but like I'm not the most spiritual person. But I'm trying to develop and build that aspect of my life a little more than I have in the past.
Yeah.
And one thing I've started to do is I pray before I might go on stage or speak or even a podcast.
Yep.
And it's the prayer is this, and whether you're spiritual or not, I still think it places emphasis where it should be. And the prayer is this: help me to understand this person. Help me to ask good questions. Help me to remember to have my audience in mind as I'm asking questions, and help me get the message that you want me to share or extract from this person. Just help me do that.
It's like a little meditation at
That's
the same
what it is.
time.
What it does is it's like, okay, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about you, and it's about what my audience needs to hear. And when I get a message from a man who's like, hey, man, I heard that conversation you had, and I started talking with my wife differently, and we are doing so much better. Or I talked with a guy yesterday. He said, you know what, Ryan, I started listening to your podcast, and I joined one of your programs. I'm down 40 pounds, and my wife and I are doing better than we ever have before. And I'm like, that's how you know you're on the right path. And it isn't about me. It's about everybody else who helped that guy get what he needed to improve his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Well, and that's what the Order of Man podcast is all about. Where can people find it?
Order of Man, wherever you listen to podcasts, orderofman.com. And I'm social media-wise, I'm most active on Instagram, so that's at Ryan Michler.
All right. And you do have a website?
Yep, orderofman.com. You can find everything we're doing there. Just type in Order of Man. You'll find us. Wherever you are, type in Order of Man. You'll figure out what we're doing.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. I wish we had more time.
I know, you got a jet.
We need to connect some more, but I'm just excited for your success. Keep it up.
Hopefully we can get that bear hunt that I dogged out on you.
Let's do it again. Yeah. Any hunt.
Any hunt.
We can find one.
Absolutely.
So,
thanks, brother.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Folks, thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, as always, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate all that. And as always, stay gritty.